Whoa! Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Monkey Barrel Comedy Chat Show. I'm George Fox, your host. If this is your first episode, I'm going to explain everything that happens in the show in a minute. But first of all, let's get to our guest, the wonderful Carl Donnelly.
Hello, everyone.
This is also genuinely the first moment that we're saying hi. I'm George.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. I should have done this backstage.
Got to set up straight in.
You got
That's
to
good
see
though.
it.
That's quite good to.
Yeah, it's very rare to get that
It's
in a
all
podcast.
it'll be an authentic chat.
Yes. So to explain,
to know each other. Sat Parisian style.
or halfway through, we're like,
Has it always been sat both side by side?
Yeah. I would like it aggressively, like it's a quiz show or something.
I think across the.
Yeah.
Like when boxers do a face off.
Or that'd be great. Or like blind date, just a big huge screen at the end.
Or back to back. Oh yeah,
Back to back would be great. Both of us in coffins. I'm all for that as well. So for you and for people who are watching this as their first ever episode, the way the show works is we have wonderful comedians coming to visit Monkey Brown and perform. We sit down and ask them questions. We have questions from comedians. We have questions from people who watch the podcast. They're not the usual questions. They're weirder.
Right, okay.
We've had a lot of crimes admitted to on this podcast, like a worrying amount of crimes admitted to. So already start making up your alibi.
Okay.
So for people who the few people who might not have seen you before, how would you kind of describe your comedy and your vibe? You can even just say vibe.
Right, I'd say vibes.
Yeah.
Strong,
Vibes?
a lot of vibe.
My
style
vibe is vibes. That's great.
You know. I'm pretty much I suppose storytelling stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of that sort of post, Daniel Kitson era.
Yeah.
So when I started, it was all those guys that were like, so we're dictating the pace almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that affected a lot of us, and thought we'd tell stories and build little things. And so always that was, and also I grew up watching Billy Connolly and
Of course.
Dave Allen and the people I was watching when I was a kid were like probably dictated that as well. So I think I'd say I do stories, but in them they're full of observations.
Yeah. Isn't it funny
Very
how
funny observations.
comedy is cyclical like that, where there's almost like a 10 or 20 year gap where
Yes.
like Billy Connolly would have been doing a lot of story, and a lot of comedians around that time would have been doing storytelling. And then the early 2000s, that's what everyone was doing.
Yes.
But then if you look at the 90s, it was very just joke.
Yeah.
And then
Get a
nowadays-
suit on.
Yeah.
And be sort of sarcastic. That was the 90s, wasn't it?
That was the whole thing of the 90s.
I almost think again it was a reaction to that, wasn't it? There was, I'd say that the sort of the Kitsons and Russell Howards, that early 2000s,
was a
very
reaction back.
optimistic. It was upbeat. It was, I think, it was a reaction to the cynics.
Yeah, which I feel like when I look at a lot of comedy now, I feel like 10 or 15 years from now, it's going to be really wild and kind of creative. And
well, obviously, because then I think like 10 years ago is when we had when the clowns showed up.
Yeah.
And I loved, Dr. Brown came in. Suddenly there was all these Goulier train, and like what I love that. But what I loved even more about it was how many comics were like, no, but it's not comedy. Stand-up comedians we sort of get really upset if people don't find us funny, but we also are the most judgy of other people's comedy.
No. The way I specifically do it is the way to do it. It's that's never been the case. So something that we do on the show to kind of get our guests settled in is we have the social media time machine. We're going to jump back to an old post that we've picked randomly, and you're going to have to explain it.
God.
We've had pictures of people pointing a gun at a dog. That was one that we had.
How far could you go back on mine? Because up till quite recently, and I think it's because my subscription ran out, I had an app that deleted like tweets. So any tweet that was over like a year old, any Instagram post that was over a year old. And you've just reminded me, I think I might not have renewed my subscription.
Well,
so I think
thank God you didn't, because now we've got this content. Here we go up on screen for people watching on YouTube. Oh, that's nice. 2020.
That was I had a good lockdown.
Yeah, that was the start of lockdown. That's like you went crazy from day
one. Thing I will say
one.
is my mental health was sound during lockdown, as you can see from this photo. That was just I think I was just messing around. I found that hat is a hat I bought in Joshua Tree in Los Angeles in a shop, like a sort of thrift store. And I saw it, and it was so cumbersome to carry back in suitcases. But I just saw it, it was like this insane. It's got like a blue crystal on the front. I'm never going to wear it ever for anything. I think it featured on like the back of an Edinburgh flyer once. But so I bought it, and then I also basically I think I was just bored, and I saw it, and I saw some Buddhist prayer beads, and I thought, and then I also happened to have a sort of slightly short cropped Japanese trouser.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I wonder what happens if I put it all together and see what
it
the
works.
vibe is.
I feel like it works.
I think it works in some way. I wouldn't go on stage in it.
Yeah. It feels like a couple's just decided to invite a third person in. And you're standing outside like, hey, I heard you talking through the garden. No, I would take advice from that person.
I'm trying to remember what shoes those are. I don't recognise those shoes at all. Do you ever have that where you see yourself in an item of clothing and you don't ever remember
Quite a lot.
owning it?
Yeah.
Quite a lot. When I was going through your Instagram to find some pictures, there's a lot of outfits from lockdown that you used to try on, and this is one of many that you used to post. So yeah, it's a tough choice between all the different outfits you're putting together during lockdown.
Even when you look back at photos, especially from lockdown, you're like, what was I doing? What was my idea behind this? A nice, appropriate reference to Tiger King as well. Of course, it says I look like someone they'd interview on that bloody Tiger King.
And I said that even though I've never ever watched Tiger King.
Really?
That was purely I just picked a zeitgeisty phrase.
I think you'd love it if you like that look. You'd love it. It's a lot of that. It's a guy who looks like that going, I will never financially recover, which feels like that should be the quote for this picture. But this was quite early on in lockdown. So where did you spend lockdown?
So we had quite an interesting one. We almost got stuck in Australia. So my wife's from Melbourne, and we were due to have a child in June 2020. I mean, in hindsight, we had the dumbest idea. That my wife was due to have a baby at the end of June, and we were going to come up for the Fringe. I was going to do a show, and we were just going to come up here with a 1-month-old for the whole month.
Oh my God.
And that was a cool plan. Yeah, let's go up to the Fringe, man. And then
that's a crazier idea than buying that hat.
Yeah, I know. And then we went to Australia I was going to do the comedy festival, Melbourne Comedy Festival, and we were going to fly back about a month, maybe 3 weeks before my wife was getting to the point where you can't fly.
Yeah.
And then COVID started happening. And then we flew. So we flew to Australia just when it was really starting to kick off.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like it was going to ruin the world. It just felt like something everyone needs to be a bit vigilant about.
Yeah.
And like no one had a mask. A couple of people had masks on the flight over, but it wasn't mandatory then on flights. And we got to Australia, spent a couple of days getting over jet lag. Then we hired a car and drove to Adelaide for the last weekend of the Adelaide Fringe. And we were just going to have a little fun time seeing friends. On the 4-day drive doing the Great Ocean Road, the world just started collapsing. Like everything was, and suddenly it was like, hang on, they started talking about flight bans, and we drove into Adelaide on a Friday just as they'd cancelled the Melbourne Comedy Festival. So every comedian had lost their next however many months of stuff, and everyone was miserable. And then suddenly everything seemed to be falling apart. So we met people on a Friday in Adelaide. I remember going out and getting very drunk with the comedian Lloyd Langford and Jimmy McGee, and just sort of drown our sorrows.
I know those are real names, but they still sound fake.
And then we jumped back in the car Saturday, drove back to Melbourne, and spent 3 days on the phone to Qantas trying to get out of Australia.
Yeah.
And we ended up a week later they managed to get us onto the last flight out of Australia.
Wow.
And it was the first ever direct flight from Darwin.
Really?
We were on the plane for 24 hours.
Oh my
Flew
God.
into Sydney to Darwin, refueled, and then it was insane.
That's
and so
insane.
It went from, what's this? This is not really a thing. Let's not have a mask. So 2 weeks later, it was like a disaster film.
Well, we've lived through things like swine flu, which was all played up as like, oh, this is going to be crazy, and then it was like, it would just wipe your feet. Do you remember? Was it mad cow disease where they just put like mats with antibacterial stuff in shops? And that was it.
Yeah.
And then I had the same feeling of like, all right, well, this is not going to be a big thing. And then suddenly, I'd done a show in Glasgow, and just even the hotel was like, you can't stay here anymore. We're shutting down. And I was like, oh God, not as the same as yours with the last plane out of, I got the third last bus out of Glasgow. It was fine.
I did some of the things, I did some cool, interesting things. Like we went back to Australia a year later.
Yeah.
And we had to quarantine, do proper hotel quarantine.
I've heard about that. I have
in.
some friends who had to do
And
that.
it was crazy. 2 weeks in a hotel room without opening windows.
Yeah, and they would bring you your food, and they would bring you things.
And you get checked. You had a little swab every day or something.
Yeah.
And
they would do it at the door as well.
Yeah. You had to put a mask on to open your door to get your food.
Yeah.
And my wife still has a little bit of not PTSD, is a bit overselling it, but when we go away, if we're in a hotel, she definitely doesn't enjoy a hotel as much as she used to.
Yeah.
Because it just gives her a little flashback to being stuck inside, the sound of the aircon, everything like that.
Yeah.
Whereas I have zero repercussions from it. I'm fine.
Of course. But being stuck there, especially being stuck there for 2 weeks, you know, any room in the world is great, but the second you hear the door lock, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it was very, very odd.
I feel most bad
out of a window.
I think I feel the worst for the people that were on the cruises. Do you remember that?
Oh, man.
They were on the cruises and they just locked them on and said, we're just going to let this go and get really bad and let everyone get infected.
Have you ever been on a cruise ship?
No.
I did a gig on one a couple of months ago in Australia, and it was the only time I've ever been on one.
Yeah,
I've never, and like I was nervous, like, but I got on it, and it is like it was fine being on a cruise, but my room, like they put me in like the bowels of the ship.
Oh God!
I didn't have a window. I was in like a dark cell for 2 days.
Probably next to the elevator so you could hear it going up and down.
I was genuinely next to where they kept the bags, everyone's bags on board. And it was so weird. I just had to keep going and sitting and looking at the sea to keep my soul
You kept going
alive.
to the door expecting someone to test you for COVID and you're like, no, this is different. This is a different kind of trapped. I had a similar thing last weekend because I was down in London and I booked into a cheap hotel that had no windows.
Nice.
And I got a message that, the Aurora Borealis is occurring everywhere. And I completely missed it. Could not believe it.
I didn't see it though. I was in London for that. And everyone was messaging me the next day saying, did you see it? I was like, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't look up. But I just...
Did you see it, Ewan?
I missed it too. I literally just got back to my flat and then I looked at my phone and everyone was posting the pictures. I'm top floor, so I'm 4 floors up.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I be bothered walking 4 floors down?
Ewan's like a classic lad shagger. So anytime you ask him, like, how are things going? He's like, out shagging again. I missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, you know me, George.
That's not true. Can I say
that is
to people
absolutely not
watching,
true.
that is not true.
That is not true. But no,
you might have even heard producer Clay go, there.
I made the decision not to go downstairs again. I think I was working all day and I regret that.
The Northern Lights.
Because I couldn't be bothered going back down the stairs. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm glad about it.
All right. Well, now I feel better about my situation.
That's what I'll
Come again. Come on.
It's only happened once in 100 years. It'll happen again. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be good. So we also, Carl, have questions from social media. Oh. Our first question is, do you believe in ghosts?
That's just a weird thing. I genuinely was thinking about this about 90 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I was in a coffee shop and I just saw something online and I just was thinking about ghosts. That's bizarre. No.
No. It's a very reasonable answer. That's the best answer possible.
Do you know, it's purely that. And I also, by the way, I'm a bit of a hippie. I'm a vegan. I've drank ayahuasca in the woods. I've smoked DMT. I've felt like I've communed with other realities.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I draw a line at ghosts. I'm just like, well, no, because we would have caught them on camera, and I don't care when people say like, no, but watch this orb.
Orbs
and
annoy me, yeah.
And it's all. I just think it would be impossible at this point with all the camera phones to not have footage. And why are they always the same type of ghosts? You know, that whole thing about why is it always just Victorian children or something?
Yeah.
Why isn't it cavemen? Why aren't there ghost dinosaurs? You know what I mean?
Why isn't it someone from like 2006 being like, how does Lost end? And you're like, not great. It's not great. You might have.
It's never like someone from the 90s.
Yeah.
I just think it's all. I think we grew up listening to stories, watching films that have an idea of what ghosts are, and that's seeped in, and that's why in the dark you see things. I've seen things that, in hindsight, you know, if I was a different type of person, I'd probably be like, yeah, I've seen a ghost. But actually, I think it was dark, and I was a little bit scared, and I saw something in the corner of my eye, and my brain did the rest.
I just watched Nightmare on Elm Street. That was a little bit spooky. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis?
I have once. And again, I did wake up thinking, well, a ghost sat on my chest.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, no, it's probably just that thing they call there's a real condition.
I think there's a real condition. I think that's what people in olden days thought was a ghost. Because I experienced it a few times, and it was that exact thing of where I felt there was something in the room, and it came up and it pushed down on my chest. But that's because your body is numbing itself and you're breathing. And as you're feeling your chest go up and down breathing, your brain is going, oh, something must be sitting on my chest. So it's so funny to me that human beings have been experiencing that and interpreting it that way.
Yeah.
But what annoys me is YouTubers who make their entire career about going ghost hunting, and then they'll go into a house and they'll go, oh, we find something. And the second shit goes down, they run out. Yeah. That's your whole job.
But it is scary, isn't it? I remember I've had a couple of experiences where I did just I mean, the scariest one I ever had was somebody played a prank on me. My cousin played a prank on me when I was like 11, man, and he was like 15, and they live in Aberdeen. I was visiting him in Aberdeen, and he told me such a scary ghost story just before bed. It was a great one. Like, it was about him at a sleepover, and in the middle of the night, like, they'd been doing ghost stories, and they were watching Twin Peaks, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and in the corner of the room, he was the only one awake. There was like 8 of them in this living room, you know, and he looked over, and there was just like a figure who looked like, what's his name from Twin Peaks? The guy with long hair. The scary sort of
Mr.
guy.
something, or Bob, is it?
Bob. It's Bob. And he said there was a guy who just looked like the figure of Bob sat on his chair. And he looked him in the eyes, and he was about to scream, and the figure just went, shh. And he had to go back. He just said he closed his eyes and kept them closed for the rest of the night, not asleep, but just couldn't open it. And he told me that, and I was so scared as an 11-year-old. I fell asleep. I was sleeping on a little airbed next to his bed. And while I was asleep, he just built a figure on the chair in the corner of his room out of his clothes. He stuffed with stuff and like a hat. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked in the corner of the room and I screamed so loud. And like, he woke up laughing. It's like he had prepared himself for the prank so well that he actually woke up like he knew that it had worked. Oh man, that was a good one.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
I played a prank with my sister once where me and my family went to a house down in Cork in Ireland to rented it out, and she got a room, and it was a normal room, but in the corner was a tiny little chair, like a doll's chair almost,
nice.
but it was facing into the wall, like it was a child's chair, and I knew if I said anything it wouldn't work. So what I did was I got my nephew, who was only maybe 6 or 7, and I told him to just stand in the room, and I said to my sister, like, oh, where's Josh? And she went and looked for him, and what I told him to say was, he turned around and said, Mommy, the boy sitting in the chair won't stop crying.
Oh, yes.
And she screamed, and I had to run outside to laugh.
Yeah.
Like, my chest hurt from laughing so much. And even after that, she was still like, I don't believe it. I was like, no, it was a joke. I set it up. We still had to swap rooms.
Yeah.
Ghosts, I think, it's a fun idea to talk about ghost stories and pranks and things like that. It's when people get really into it and have those boxes that make noise.
Yeah.
There's a TV show called Ghost Adventures where they had a couple who made all of these instruments for them, and they would just play white noise, and you would hear random, obviously FM or AM radio sounds would come through, and they would be like, oh, it would go, and it'd be like, oh, it says I died here. And it did not say that at all. What's weird about that show is the two people who designed all these things then went on to murder each other. And I wondered, why didn't they ever try and contact them? Because if anyone's going to be contactable, it's going to be the people that made the machine. So question number 2 is, if you could pick any nickname for yourself and be sure nobody would make fun of you for it, what would you choose? So you're protected. No one will make fun of it. Not even behind your back.
I mean, but I'm not. I don't think you should be allowed to pick your own nickname. I think that defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
My friend, when he went to uni, and I remember him telling me that he met a guy on day one in halls who just referred to himself as the Guns, and he says it's like, and he said to him, I don't know if you're allowed. Did you pick that yourself? He's like, yeah, and I was like, you're not allowed. So I don't know. I wouldn't. I've never really had nicknames.
It's a really bad nickname for an airport.
Yeah. My nickname briefly when I was in my teens was Cake.
Cake.
Yeah, I was quite a rotund teen.
It's an unfortunate one,
but it was sort of actually I didn't mind it. You know, I did that thing of quite clever thing. If any sort of larger teenagers are watching. That sounded creepy, but
I don't know why you got really whispery into the microphone there.
But I very much latched on to the guys that were doing the bullying, and became like the sort of, you know, the writer for them.
For their bits.
And it meant I didn't get bullied, but like it was, Cake became like a sort of quite loving nickname that I did quite like. So actually, weirdly, it sounds critical, but I actually quite like that one. So I'd probably just bring that back.
You'd bring Cake back?
Yeah. Weirdly, the comedian Paul Chowdhury has always called me Bubbles, and I don't know why. And I've always liked that as well.
Bubbles is good. I like Bubbles.
We'll just see each other and it'll be like Bubbles, and I just think it's nice, isn't it? I think it's quite a nice.
That's great.
It's like a sort of.
It's very rare you get a nickname that you can shout that excitedly. That seems fun. It makes other people want to join it. Like Bubbles makes everyone excited. If you walked in a room and someone went, cake, everyone would be like, is there cake? Where is it? Can I have a slice? Good. No, that's a good one. And yeah, if you could pick one though that nobody would make fun of, like that's the control. Like people are impressed by it. You can pick whatever you want.
But someone is always. We live in the UK. Someone's always going to make fun of.
Oh yeah, but this is
not
a magical
single
spell.
word you could have.
If nobody can do it, I'd go for Saucy Boy. Oh, here comes Saucy Boy.
I don't know. Because I used to have a routine about how somebody once misheard my name and thought my name was Kyle Bubbly.
Yeah,
and that was so. I used to like that as a sort of moniker, as a faux name. But it's so dumb that people wouldn't find it funny, wouldn't they? If they wouldn't, I would just change my name legally to that.
Well, I like that we've asked you like what nickname would you pick, and you've got two that genuinely have been said to you that are both great. Cake and Bubbles. It works out well. Well, all these questions are just to remind you of how great your life actually is.
Thanks.
Question number 3 is talk to me about your relationship with. I don't know. What a way to.
Every part
what
of
a way to say this.
Suggests this is going to be big.
Talk to me about your relationship with and or feelings towards the moon.
Oh, I mean, I'm a fan.
It's great.
Yeah,
I miss it when it's not there. You know that night of the month where it's not there at all.
I am. Yeah, it's not. I mean, you know, as somebody, and again, this is going back to probably 10 years ago when I was going through a divorce, and I got into psychedelics quite heavily for
I feel like the moon is a big component of that.
The moon, but it's much more. It features more heavily in your life when you're doing psychedelic drugs, the moon, than just your normal day-to-day life. So yeah, I suppose I've probably maybe spent more time gazing upon it than some others have. So yeah, I do. I like it.
Are you fan of all of like the moon landings and all that kind of stuff?
Not really. I don't really care about any of that. I'm not really into. I sort of that doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah, we had Garrett Miller on a while ago, and his show for this Fringe is about that.
It's about
the moon landings and his fascination with it.
Really?
It's just like wrap it up, mate.
Yeah,
the moon.
He's got
that tranquility. All right, Garrett.
What's your thoughts on the conspiracies on that?
I mean, it's very funny. People have that thing about like, oh, why can't you see the stars in the photographs? And it's like, well, if you've ever taken a photograph, you'll understand why.
Yeah.
Because everything in front is so bright that what's behind is gone.
Yeah.
Or people go, why isn't the flag waving or whatever? Or no, why is the flag waving? Why is it moving? And it's because there's like a metal rod that goes along it to hold it out. And even just putting it in the ground created enough momentum that it waved back and forth. So I don't think so. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the American government had a backup plan. But I think what we saw was them actually landing on the moon. Because also they left little mirrors on the moon.
Yeah.
And so for the last 60 years, like the high school students in America will do a thing where they'll shoot a laser up at the exact coordinates and it bounces it back and shows the exact distance. So we couldn't have done that. It's not like...
But it's, I mean, because I don't really believe many conspiracy theories at all. But that one, I've always thought I could sort of understand why people have a leaning towards it, because it was that whole thing of Kennedy saying we'll do it by the end of the decade.
Yeah.
And then he gets shot.
Yeah.
And it's the Cold War. And then they manage it in 1969. Like a lot of things make you go like, oh, it had to happen. So like, I do think they went. And the reason I also think they went is because I don't imagine Russia would keep that quiet.
Yeah.
During a Cold War, if America faked it, I feel like Russia might have tried to prove that. And
they might have said something.
Yeah. So I've always thought that is my
Russia's not the kind to be like, I'm going to stew on this for 100 years.
They're not the quiet types. So that's what I've always thought. But that's one of the ones. There's a few of them that I'm like, I totally get why people are into it. Do you know what I mean? Some of them.
Sasquatch. Like, what do you think about Sasquatch?
That is bollocks.
That is bollocks. Yeah. I think it's a guy in a ghillie suit just walking through the woods. I think people talked about chupacabra for years because they were like, oh, look at these.
What's chupacabra?
So chupacabra is one in like, I think
it's
South America. It's like a little creature that like kills cattle, and because they would keep finding cattle where their eyes would be eaten or they'd be eaten in a very specific way or attacked in a very specific way, and people were like, "Oh, it must be a dangerous creature." And then eventually, animal biologists just looked into it, and it just seems like that's the way that coyotes eat these animals. They like try to eat the face first or the bum first. Big ass eaters, coyotes. They're mad for it. Like Gen Z, they love it.
Probably polyamorous as well. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other conspiracy theories.
Ancient giants is quite a big one at the minute, isn't it? Have you heard about this? Ancient giants. I've got some very close family members who are conspiracy theorists, and like sort of the things I see shared on Facebook, like. Yeah. For some reason, giants seems to be the current one for
big giant one. Also, people think that like mountains are actually the broken off tree trunks of giant
seen
trees.
That one. I've seen that one.
That one's a good insane. That one's wild.
That's what I mean. So it's weird that I sort of look at the moon landing conspiracy and be like, I can see why you'd think that. Yeah. But then I see somebody talking about mountains being trees. I'm like, you can fuck off. This is too much. Absolute lunatic.
This is insane. Okay. Another thing that we have is we've questions. Well, we have 3 questions from our previous guest, who's the wonderful Josh Jones. So Josh sent them in. We're going to check out a little clip.
Hello, Carl. Hope you're well. I'm not going to lie. I forgot about this. Doing it very last minute. I'm at my brother's house. Football people that he likes. His favourite is Cantona. Question number 1. Who's your favourite ever football player? Question number 2. Okay. What's your worst habit you've got from comedy? Mine's late night McDonald's. And question number 3, if you were stuck on a desert island with 4 other comics and you needed to escape, who would you choose? Thank you very much. Hope you have a lovely time in Edinburgh. Goodbye.
Thank you, Josh Jones.
Very good.
So question number 1 from Josh was, who's your favourite ever football player? You a football fan?
Yeah, I'm a football fan. I am a Tottenham fan. So it'd probably be, I would say maybe David Ginola or David Ginola, as you're meant to say it, but I just put 0 effort into foreign names. I think he was like the age I was when he came to Tottenham, and like we weren't a great team then. We were a mid-table team, and he wasn't Maradona. Yeah, but like he was a very classy, lovely footballer, very skillful and silky, and like so. Just at that point, he just made us feel so exciting, and he was so cool, and like you used to have a little fag after the match, and like I just thought like that is what I want in a footballer. I always like sort of luxury players. Yeah, some people love a sort of getting stuck in sort of player. I liked him. I loved Dimitar Berbatov when he was. I just like players that make it
have a certain vibe.
Just make it look. People that make it look easy. Yeah, that's what I like to say.
I remember being a kid getting the. Did you ever do the Premier League stickers? Collecting them as a kid, and there was certain players that just had a vibe about them that you would be like, I gotta get that sticker.
Well, Cantona was, it's a great shout. Cantona, he had that vibe as well. Didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you like Cantona, he's the footballer who then went on to be like a director and an actor and a musician.
He's
a singer. Have you seen he sings?
Yeah,
he's a touring musician.
Really?
Apparently, he's horrendous.
Oh yeah,
he does tour as a musician now.
That's weird. That
apparently his acting and directing is great, but his singing, it's like he can't do everything. Bro.
No,
you got to pick something that is not going to be the best.
Yeah.
But I think Eric Cantona was for most of the 90s. He was like everyone's, even people who didn't like Manchester United were like. Yeah, Cantona's cool.
Exactly.
After he kicked that guy.
I think I was with quite a lot of people. I thought that guy absolutely deserved getting flying kicked in the head.
100%.
I do think. I don't know. I'm not against. I'm not saying I endorse violence, but I think sometimes members of the public. Sorry, I don't know how I'm going to end this sentence.
We'll see.
But like there's always an outcry when somebody like a public figure, sports, even politics. And I don't like politicians, but I think when a politician or someone or actor or something reacts to being literally shouted at you, it's like when a celebrity punches a paparazzi, and everyone's like, it's just disgusting. It's like, no, the geezer had a camera in his face. Right in his face. I think you can absolutely set yourself up there to get a slap.
There was that politician who threw,
John Prescott.
Yeah, John Prescott. He got an egg thrown in his face, and everyone got annoyed. But it was like within a second, he punched the guy.
Yeah, the guy threw an egg at his head from there. Yeah, I think that is like for like. You can punch someone in the head. Yeah.
I couldn't believe there was drama about that. I was like, of course you do that.
So Cantona, I think he might have. I think he overreacted, but I don't fully condemn him for
Yeah, but I think for him, it's probably the best thing that ever happened. That was his version of like a big TikTok moment or something.
Yeah,
where there's a big
yeah.
like YouTube drama.
Yes.
That was his version of like sitting down. I'm so sorry, and then popped his collar. Question number 2 is: what's your worst habit you've got from comedy? The comedy's introduced to your life.
I'd say, do you know what it is? I would say it's not shopping addiction, but like when you travel a lot and you spend a lot of time in, like even like this weekend, you know, I've had a lot of free time during the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, as much as you'd love to say, I sit around and just write all day, you don't, do you? Like you sort of just mooch. That's what you do. You do a lot of mooching around, and I'm very prone to just going into a shop and just buying something I don't need, and it's almost just to pass the time,
Just to feel like you've done something. There's
Yes.
something where if you spend the day out and you buy something, you feel like, right, that was okay.
Yeah.
If you don't buy anything, you're like, I failed.
I will say, one positive thing out of that, I would say, is I grew up. I always hated secondhand shops growing up because my mum used to go to them, but that was because of finances. My parents were very poor. We grew up in council housing, but like my mum always used to take me into secondhand shops, charity shops, and I used to feel so embarrassed. And actually, from touring and doing comedy and having a lot of time to kill and going into shops, I just re-entered the charity shops because I just had hours to kill. I might as well, and I learned to love them. Like I absolutely love a charity shop now.
Yeah.
You know, they're really good because it's just chaos at times.
Yeah.
You can spend 40 minutes in one just looking around.
And you'll find personality in there, which you so
Absolutely.
often don't find.
And I really like vintage clothes. Like not vintage, you know, I've sort of a bit of a adverse reaction to vintage shops, like you know, them clothes shops that are just like hipsters that go to charity shops and hoover up all the actual things and sell them for 50 times more.
Exactly. Here's a jacket that somebody bought for £50, gave to a charity shop, and we're now selling it for £250. You're like, oh my god!
So I don't go to vintage shops, but I like going to charity shops and finding vintage clothes that I'll actually wear. Like yesterday, I actually bought a lovely Italian linen jacket.
Yeah.
That is gorgeous. I found that in a charity shop.
There's a charity shop on a bus route that me and my partner go on, and she consistently sees this Princess Diana plate, and it's always the shop's always closed. She's like, I want that fucking plate. It's like, why? And she's like, I just gotta have it. It just speaks to me. I need to have the Princess Di plate.
Yeah, you've got to eat off it though.
Yeah, 100%. I said
It cannot
that.
be an ornamental.
And it can't be
Just
just
get a whole set. You
It can't be
only
just
eat
for
off
cakes.
royal plates.
It can't just be for cakes. It has to be spaghetti, messy things,
just
eating
normal.
off
Just
Diana's
having a
face.
sandwich off Diana's face.
Soup off Diana's face. It's a very shallow plate, but still.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, and then number 3, if you were stuck on a desert island with 4 other comedians and you had to get off, you had to get off the island, you had to escape.
Is it?
I think it was 4 other comics, but also the question I think is, if you had to choose one of those 4 comedians to help you escape, is that what the question was?
I couldn't quite figure out what the question was because he said, I think it's if you're stuck on with 4 other comics, who would you choose to be stuck on with?
Oh, okay.
But 4 is an interesting number to choose.
Yeah, it's a weird
That's
number.
the bit that threw me off.
I took from it that it's 4 comedians that you think have the wherewithal to get off a desert island.
I think that's probably
Because obviously 99% of comedians are going to be fucking useless in this scenario.
Absolutely.
Like the worst people to be stuck on a desert island with.
Garrett Millerick talking about the fucking moon again. Oh, God.
So you need, and you know, a lot of comics lack common sense. You know, there's loads of people I can imagine just would be dead by day one. You know what I mean? But you know, but then also, there's some people that are probably quite outdoorsy. Not as much mod nowadays, I'd say. When I started out, like I caught the end of the 90s. You know, I was sort of mid 2000s. I started out, but like there was still, it felt like there was the new wave before me, but it was most of the comics in the clubs and that was still like the old guard.
Yeah.
And some of them were pretty, you know, sort of outdoorsy. Rugged types.
Yeah. I remember doing a lot of shows with people that used to be cage fighters.
Yeah,
There's a lot of that going around.
Weird,
where
isn't
it was a weird time.
So let me think of somebody. Well, I mean, I've got some mates who are quite handy. I'll tell you who'd be good. Kai Humphreys from, sort of, I'll say Newcastle, he's actually from Blythe, but Northeast. Yeah, because I say that as a friend of Kai's. We've actually got matching tattoos, me and Kai Humphreys.
Really?
We got them drunk at the Melbourne Comedy Festival.
Oh, wow.
It's the letters NB and it stands for Naughty Boys. But what I'm saying,
That's the nickname I want if no one would make fun of it. Oh, my God.
but Kai is one of them people that he's almost like, like a cockroach. You cannot kill him. Do you know what I mean? Like, not I've tried, but it's just like I've been on stag do's with Kai. I've done festivals. He's just always upbeat, solid. Nothing's going to knock him back. He'll just do everything that is needed to get off that island. So I would trust him with my life.
I'm sure you geek with Ryan Cullen.
Yes.
Yeah, and like Ryan Cullen's another guy where I don't think I could get an emotion out of him.
No.
Ever. He's not someone that would complain on an island.
No, he'd just be totally like it's consistent. He'd be the same as you would off the island.
He'd be the same on the boat before the boat crashed. It'd be the exact same. I think if you had Kai and him, you'd be okay.
Yeah. I'd say so. Kai's probably would be number one on the list. You probably want some big old madman like Craig Campbell or something. Just, not for the chat.
The old I'm just kidding way. We've all done it.
I like Craig, but I think I've muted him on all social media. But he's Craig would be he'd get you off that island.
Yeah,
or he'd eat you. It's one of those two. So that's going to be.
I think you could eat significant parts of Kai and it still wouldn't. It'd still survive.
It'd be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't eat the part with the tattoo that says "Naughty Boys," please. I want to remember that.
Yeah. Who'd be? That you might pick one for novelty reasons, just to see how funny it would be having them on there. I mean, Josh would be a good shout. Josh Jones on that island.
Yeah.
It'd just be fun to watch.
It sounds like Josh has put you on this island, so definitely take Josh as well.
Josh is there. And who else should I pick? I don't know. It's a hard one, isn't it? I can't think of anyone who's genuinely a proper outdoorsy one of my peers. It's not really that vibe, is it? We don't go into comedy because we love the outdoors.
Yeah. Or if they do, they hate the outdoors now.
Is there any ex-army comedians?
Maybe. Not that I can think
The only
of.
one I can think of is Nick Wilty, who I don't even know if he does stand up anymore. I've not seen him in years. But
also, you do need to survive on this island. So would you pick somebody that maybe can cook or...
I'm actually quite a good cook myself.
Oh, okay. You've brought that.
But yes. Is anyone a hunter? Is there any hunters? Are there any comedians who also hunt?
Who has hunter material?
Just Joe Rogan.
Yeah. I feel a lot of comedians now are gatherers, not hunters.
Yeah. And
You could bring Joe Rogan if you want.
I don't know.
I don't know either. If you'd want him
a lot
there.
of talking, wouldn't there be? But
yeah, there's a lot of him screaming like you ever see a shark fight a bear, and you're like, calm down, Joe, please, Joe.
Yeah. Who else? I'll probably just pick one of my mates. I want someone that actually I'm really close with, other than Kai. Someone like.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
You bring that friend who pranked you all those years ago about the ghost in the corner of the room.
Well, it's my cousin. So
Yeah, so your cousin's gonna be like-
my cousin Craig Finney.
Well,
I
Craig
would
Finney
take.
is going to be like, oh, is this the prank? We're not really on an island. And then slowly it sets in. We are trapped on this island.
He's not a comic, but he's coming. All right, 3 comics and 1 cousin.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Cool.
You got to have an audience, otherwise you're not comedians.
Yes.
That makes
He's also
sense.
absolutely ripped.
Oh, well,
My
this...
cousin is a big unit, like proper gym bunny. So he'd actually be very handy.
That's perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I feel like we found out a lot about you today. We found out a lot about things you like, the moon, and it was interesting as well. It wasn't insufferable like Garrett Bloody Miller. Is there any gigs or any events or any shows or anything you want to mention to people at home?
Well, I'm doing Fringe for the first time. I'm doing a full run at the Fringe for the first time since 2019.
Wow.
And it's just weird because I was here every year from like day one. I love it. I love the Fringe.
Yeah.
I've never ever been one of them comics that sort of moans about it or has any gripes with it. I just love it. But just obviously 2020 got cancelled.
Yeah.
Then we had a child. So 2021, 22 were very child heavy. And then last year I came up and did 5 nights, and it just reminded me how much I love it. So I'm just coming back for the full month.
It's good because I remember you were saying at the start that you have the child and then go straight to Fringe.
Yeah.
And then the reality set in of like, maybe I'll take a couple of years off.
Wait till she's 4 and she can actually. And also last year she loved it. Like, I took her to loads of shows, and I think it's a cool place for young.
Yeah.
So actually people like, I know some comics wouldn't dream of bringing their families up, but like I want my daughter to love it as much as I do.
It's such an interesting thing to see a city adopt, an art form for basically in a whole month, and everyone's so excited about it.
Fringe. I love a fringe. That's what I love, like the Adelaide Fringe. I like fringes because there's just carnies everywhere. And like, I just feel like that's what I find it exciting. I know if you live in Edinburgh, like, it's probably quite a lot to take on for a month. But
the population does double.
Yeah, it's insane. And but if I like sort of the madness of it. So I'm coming up for the full month to do a show called Boosgumps. And it was I changed the name of it. So I just did a run of a show in Melbourne called Glow Up. Yeah. And while I was there, I really liked how the show became, but I then thought that I want to change it loads for Edinburgh, just because by the end of a full run, you get a bit bored of chunks.
Of course.
So when I've registered it, I changed them to Boosgumps on a whim, because it was a quote from a German footballer called Timo Werner. Yeah. He came to Tottenham on loan earlier in the season, in January. And they said, what was it like playing in the Tottenham Stadium for the first time? And he went, it gave me Boosgumps. I found it so funny that I've named my show after it.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, definitely people, follow Carl on social media. Yes. If you want to come see shows at Monkey Bar Comedy, the show's on every single night. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it, support it, let people know about it. If you want to see more of me, I'm on twitch.tv/Fox Comedy most nights of the week doing comedy and silly stuff. Thanks for checking out the show. From myself, from Carl, from Ewan, producer Claire. Goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your week.
There's something hiding under the ice, imitation of a sound. There's something standing behind the door. Would you like